Hello everyone, in today's video, we're taking a look at a general workflow for the G3X and this lovely little Cub Crafters X Cub. Let's get started. So first things first, we visited the G3X before. One of the things that I was reading when I was going through some feedback a little while ago was looking for kind of a little bit slower of a tutorial, maybe going into a little bit more of the details. As far as the device goes, I kind of tweak it and sort of the general workflow that you would use. So the purpose of this video is to kind of be fairly thorough as far as going through all the different steps and kind of showing you sort of how I would approach it, as well as kind of where some of the tweaking options are built into this device itself. So what I'd like to do first is I'd like to go ahead and get us nice and started here. This is a really, really simple aircraft as far as buttons go. I love the fact that it's basically a single seat up front, single seat in the back. It feels a little classic, I guess is what I would call it, but it's still very, very effective here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and run through my buttons here. We're going to go ahead and get that sucker going. Go ahead and crank it. Doesn't need to work too hard here as far as this goes. I can just do one of those and wait for the sound, and then ba-bum, catches no problem. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and lean out our mixture a little bit. It's pretty naughty sitting on here on the ground anyway, just revving the engine as is, but it's probably a good idea not to get all that nasty lead on our spark plugs. So when you first open up the G3X units, you're going to notice three main pages going on here. You're going to have kind of your critical engine stats over here on your left. You're going to have sort of your PFD and your MFD sort of over here, and then you're going to have a split page over here, which basically acts as kind of that extra little piece that you need over here on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and start by pressing continue. Now, some people panic when they first boot up this unit thinking they broke something because everything is black. At least we don't have any X's on it. That's a good sign. But you'll notice as we give it a few moments, it'll actually start to kind of add all the different components into here. You'll notice I've got some inset windows in here. We've got a bunch of wind data. We have all sorts of items for our flap angles. It's all built right in there, as well as our tapes. Now, one of the things you need to know in operating this one is there's really two different operational modes. There's the touchscreen aspect of it, and there is also the actual knob aspect of it. Now, when people are flying in the air, of course, sometimes you'll find that a touchscreen is pretty hopeless. You'll be sitting there kind of like mashing the buttons, and the plane will be doing one of these. As a matter of fact, most of them, if you look right here, see this little kind of ledge? That's so you can grab it with your hand, so you can hold on to it as you use your thumb basically to press the different buttons, or hook your thumb around this so you can actually use your fingers, because again, turbulence sucks. Once it's booted up, of course, you'll see a bunch of things happen. First of all, you'll notice here that we have a couple displays going on. We have navigational information, and the synthetic vision kind of pops up directly in front of us, making it a little bit easier to kind of see where we are. We're in Nantucket today, which I don't know. I never trust Nantucket, only on account of the fact that a lot of really, really bad oopsies with airplanes always seem to happen there. I just don't know what that is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to configure this thing in a way that makes most sense for us. So I'm going to come down here to the menu page, and when you press menu, it's going to be bringing up the menu relative to the item that you're presently looking at. So right now, since I'm looking at kind of the PFD here, it's going to be all those items. One important item on the top, of course, is what your CDI source is. Right now, it's set to the global positioning system. If we wanted to use a VOR, for example, we'd have to come in here. For example, if I came over to here, this one, I don't think I can reach this one from here, but I'll do it anyway. Boop. If I was able to somehow reach that one from here, it would go ahead and show it. But you can see here, we're a little out of range, so we're not going to receive any data there. But if we had GPS selected, we could go ahead and dial that in here. You have an option here for two different inset windows. You can't see the inset windows, so if I go back to full screen by clicking the button in the upper right corner, you'll notice I have two. The one on the left, of course, is going to be my traffic display. Very, very helpful, at least to me. And of course, on the right here, I have a nearest airport display. If you want to change that, of course, you just come here and pick what you want. So let's say I want to go to map mode, hit that, and now I got myself a nice little happy map down here to sort of guide me. Obviously, if I had a preset course dialed in, I could actually dial this in and kind of see it sort of going on at the bottom. A lot of people actually split the screen in half so that they can get half and half, but we'll show that to you in a minute, don't worry. And of course, if you don't want this thing to kind of be in the way, of course, you come back here and shut all those options off if that's something that you're not really interested in. Ideally, this one works pretty well. One thing I do like, though, is putting on myself a little bearing pointer. I love how nearest airport is an option here. Like, that's so clever. I love stuff like that. So I'll come in here and press a menu. I'll press the full button. And you can see we have that little kind of mini map going here. And this is a really, really, really good display. Now, the other thing we can do, too, while we're experimenting with the PFD options is if you head to the More Options page, you're going to notice here, we can't change this, unfortunately. You can make this dials in the real one, but that's okay. We can change our wind display here. You can change all the standard rate items. You can change the HSI orientation if you want to make yourself insane. We have the ability, of course, to adjust the control of this right knob if you need. And now, one of the things that I really like here is you can actually shut off off synthetic vision. So if you're looking for a more classic kind of Garmin look, this almost looks like an Avidyne if you ask me, but you can see that it does eliminate that if that's something that you find distracting, for example. One of the fun things in my part of Connecticut is we have so many 5G towers that they actually warn you about using synthetic vision because basically your altitude will go to one of those on approach, which is not desirable to say the least. So another thing we have too is if we push the menu button twice, it's going to bring up the main menu. Now the main menu is pretty handy here. One thing you'll notice there, see this little scroll bar? A lot of people like try to grab it and do one of these. Don't do that. Just click somewhere where it's empty and drag. And that would be your finger basically coming down on the panel and dragging it up and down like that, which makes it a little bit easier. Now, one thing I point out when people are setting this one up, if you go down to the bottom under setup, there's a lot of handy dandy little things in here that kind of let you dial things in the way that you want to. You've got all the comm controls. Some people actually hide these to make it a little bit harder to see. You've got all these different radio volume. You can change which side the audio panel. All these items are basically built in here to make your life a little bit easier. Like I said, depending on what you're trying to do. Again, I'm not going to change the data fields or anything like that. Keep in mind at any point, if you get a little lost, you can always mash the back button to kind of jump back to another one. One fun thing too is I can come in here and make this Fahrenheit. Oh boy. You can change your barometric pressure. You can change your weight in here. All that stuff is done in here. Personally, I'm a pounds guy, not a gallons guy. And of course, you can set it any which way that you need, which I think is actually pretty handy because it makes it a little bit more obvious when I'm looking for specific units and stuff like that. But again, the nice thing is these settings will always remember what they were set to previously. So if you have to come here and play with any of these things, it will try to remember that the next time that you actually go ahead and use it as well. So we have our transponder settings in here too. If you need to turn this on, if you want to, for example, just turn it on, you can pop that. You can also come up here. You've got your transponder page. If you just click right there, it's going to do the exact same thing for you. So like I said, menu is going to bring us back here. Now, one of the more unusual options here, and again, these are all relatively intuitive here, is the flight controls option. Now, when a lot of people see this, their brain goes, that's my flight control. When you hit this, it's actually a copy of the GPS panel here. So for example, if I pressed FD, you can see my flight director kicks in right away. It's pointing downwards. That checks because I haven't dialed anything in here, but you can actually turn on the individual modes. Obviously, my nose up, nose down aren't going to do anything, but that is duplicated down here on my autopilot control panel as well. I'm not 100% sure why you'd come rushing in here to use it here, but hey, whatever's convenient for you, kind of a thing like that. The next thing we're going to take a look at here is how you can manage communications frequencies. Now, what you'll notice across the top here is that we have a bunch of communications things. And if you notice carefully, anything you can click on always has a box around it to make your life a little bit easier. Now, if I come over here to COM1, for example, and click on it, you'll notice it brings up a little kind of semi-com page here. Calm. So what you could do here is you can just go dial on a frequency. If I did 121.60, for example, if I wanted to save the frequency and not actually use it, I could press enter, and you can see it actually appears right there. Now, if I came up here and pressed transfer instead, you'll actually see that it'll swap the two frequencies. Now, the reason that's so handy is boop, boop, just like that, and you're good to transfer. Now, the other one that's fun too is if you actually were to grab this one, depending on how this is configured, you'll notice this is going to adjust my autopilot's altitude target. You're going to notice this little one right here will adjust my heading bug, which you can see here. You'll notice this one over on this side doesn't have a function other than adjusting the barometric pressure on that side as well. So just be a little bit careful. And if you're ever doubtful about what they particularly do, you can actually look and it'll tell you with these little icons in the corner what the particular functions do. Now, with different versions of this, you could actually pull this out to adjust the communications frequency. But for the one that we have here, quickest and easiest way to do it is just to run up here, bash it, hit the one that you want, and go ahead and press that button over there. Navigation frequencies are handled the exact same way. You just come up here, go ahead and dial in whatever you need for navigational frequency, pop the transfer button, and if you do need volume, you can come in here and activate that as well if that's something you need to check an ID. But again, that will go ahead and show itself as you're kind of cruising around kind of a thing. So the last thing we're going to take a look at is splitting our screen. So right now you'll notice I've got my little inset panel with my little kind of navigation map here. This is pretty useful stuff, but you'll notice if I left click on that map, it makes it big. Now, if I click on full again, you'll see that it automatically shrinks it back down to this little inset map right here. Now, the reason that's so darn useful is when you bring this big screen up here, you'll notice down here that my information page, this little knob here, now has new functionality. You'll notice that I can change my page across the bottom here by adjusting this knob, and you'll notice I can select specific specific zoom by adjusting this knob. We can also come up here with my buttons and actually push it like that if we wanted to zoom in and out. This little display is probably the universal most common display people use for this particular device, and it works really well. You've got your PFD over here, you've got your little navigation map over here, and everything looking pretty good. So if we wanted to, for example, we could actually surf over a couple pages to the FPL flight plan, and we could actually dial in our waypoints. So for example, we're going from Nantucket today, which is CAC, and we're going to head over to, let's say we're going over to Hartford, because this is the simplest thing I can think of. Press the enter key. You can see it goes ahead and generates their entire flight plan ready to go. Now, we've discussed in detail kind of how to fiddle with all these things before, but again, we can just literally come up here and hit activate leg. Yeah, I want to activate it. And now we're going to be following this leg between those 2 points. As simple as that. Now, one of the things I really like with this one, without going too far here, so you can actually come here and you can change what page it is. So if you want to, you can make it like ETA and ETE, for example, if that's something that you need to do. Again, click and drag here if you need to go ahead and select a specific page. But I can see from here to Nantucket is 8 seconds. That checks. And to get over to Hartford is about an hour, which checks as well. It's about 120 knots at route speed. We probably wouldn't get 120. We'd probably get like 116 or something like that, which gets us about an hour and 2-minute journey, which is pretty darn long, but not terrible. One thing I really like about this one, and again, I can go over to my engine page all the way here on the end. I like how it's got the little info page. There's your traffic page right here, is that you have all these critical details all built into here, but you also notice over here on the left that it'll actually switch to a more basic display when you have the engine page on here. We have the lean assist button up here, which is kind of fun and easy to use. That is, engine knows something doesn't look right. I'm not going to worry about it. So going to fuel calc here, we can go ahead and see, we can actually estimate how far we're going to be going. Like right now, you'll notice there's no fuel remaining. We can actually dial in our current fuel. Watch how cool this is. So if we were to go up to weight and balance, for example, we got, oh my gosh, it's in pounds. Why would you do that? We have 293 pounds of fuel on board. Whoops, 893 pounds. That seems legit. 293, enter. Also appreciate there's a fuel one. We can reset this one real quick. And now, of course, because this is set, we know our endurance at any time. So we can actually come in here and determine what our fuel economy is and all that other stuff. And I just love that, because if I need to get rid of this in a hurry, I can just go up there and press that split page and go ahead and drop my map back down to this little page over on that side. Another thing worth noting is if you take your mouse and you click anywhere along here, it's going to automatically bring up the engine page for you so that you can see kind of what's going on with your different engines. So let's go ahead and now kind of head back over here. I'm going to go sneak my way back to my flight plan. It's good to go. My map is looking pretty good there. I like that. Keep in mind at any point you have the direct to button if you need to. You're probably familiar with this one. We can go grab that. So if we knew that there's something specific, we could actually pick a specific waypoint, press enter, activate, kind of go do it. You can even come in here and like dial in a specific course too and everything. It's really good stuff. So now that you have a general introduction to it, let's go ahead and take a look at what it's kind of be like in flight here. So what we're going to be doing, like I said, we'll travel to Hartford. I'm going to come over here and just dial that waypoint in directly, make my life a little bit simpler. Sounds good to me. Super. So, of course, you can see the existing flight plan is still there, so you have to kind of be cautious with that. So there's going to be a couple different modes we want. First thing I like to do is we're going to be traveling west. We'll be doing 6,500. So what I'm going to do is come to the big knob here, and I'm just going to pre-select my desired altitude. Now, in the real world, if I knew that, for example, I was flying the traffic pattern, what I would do is I would actually dial in into whatever the traffic pattern altitude is. So that way I have a little reference that beeps at me when it's time to stop flying up. And, of course, the other thing we can do, too, is we can go ahead and select the heading. Now, when I select headings, my recommendation is to always select the heading for the actual runway you intend to use for that day. So, for example, if I came down here to my little 240 here, which will probably be my desired runway, that would be where I know it to take off. And it's just a good mental way to make sure like you're facing the right direction. And, of course, we can adjust that. So my altitude is pre-selected. I've got my heading pre-selected. I've got my course selected and ready to go. Transponders all set. Everything is pretty much as good as it needs to be now. Now, what I like to do, too, now this is really cool. I'll go ahead and bring up the big display, is if you actually zoom in, you can see the individual taxiways as well as runways itself. So if I were to go ahead and kind of start making my way towards my particular runway that we're going on, if you were at, say, an uncontrolled airport, we could actually just take a quick little peek down there, and we could see exactly what it is we need to achieve in order to get to a specific point in the airport. So in this case, again, they would be labeled normally with the normal version of this, but we'll take what we got because it's still wonderful anyway. So we'll go ahead and head up this taxiway, and we're just going to take ourselves a nice little left turn, and we're going to make our way down. Again, having that heading bug to sort of remind us a little bit about what we're doing is just going to make our lives a little bit simpler for this particular step. Let's go ahead and take a nice left turn. This thing is so sensitive. It is a good thing. I like aircraft that are very sensitive. I have my throttle all the way pulled back right now, and this thing just wants to go like 40 knots. It's fantastic. Now, as we're kind of bouncing towards the runway, one of the cool things you can do is if you press and hold the Alt key, the right Alt key, and you hold your mouse over the screen, if you were to click on it once, let me go ahead and change my view so that you can see real fast, you'll actually see that it'll bring it out into its own window. We've discussed this a bunch of times, but the reason this is so darn useful is for those of you who have external displays. I have 3 monitors on my computer, for example. You can actually drag that screen wherever you need to go, and the incredible thing is it completely interacts normally. Sometimes when, yes, I know, we just ripped through a runway without stopping. One of the things that's really, really nice about this is if we're doing like an instrument flight plan or something like that, and we just want to look at the instruments, we can just pop up the instruments like that, which makes it much, much easier to kind of see everything it is that we're doing at a particular point. I'll go ahead and close that for now. I can see perfectly fine. VR folks, of course, it's a little hard to see that instrument sometimes, so kind of keep that in mind. So, of course, we're doing about 25 knots, which is way too fast. Again, that's to give you an idea of how stupid fast this thing gets if you look away from it. Let's go ahead and start getting that mixture ready to go here. Rip. I'm going to do one of those. Now, when we're using the G3X, or we're using really any small aircraft, as a general rule, I try to avoid using any engagements or doing any of those items until we've gotten ourselves a little bit of altitude, usually about 1,000 feet. And the key reason for that, of course, is distractions happen. I've had so many things come up after takeoff. It is unbelievable. I've had birds. I've had other airplanes. I've had headphones that stop working, like up one ear so they cut out. I'll have a passenger side to suddenly throw up. I've had all those variations during those critical seconds you get between the takeoff sequence, which is what we're doing now, and when you're at a point where you can start to sort of reduce the pilot workload is kind of the human factors, if you're looking for like a fancy way to think about it. There we go. Now we're moving. Let's go. This thing takes nothing to get going. There we go. Going up. Go ahead and take a nice gentle right turn. There we are. There we are, right there. I like that right there. Now, one of the things you'll notice probably on the screen on the right, you can see this little blue line. That actually represents where we're going. So if you want to absolutely make sure that you're nice and lined up and straight on a runway, you can just go down there and look at that real quick and be like, oh, so you're just kind of intentionally hugging the left side of the runway. And it's just, yeah, relax. Boy, man, does this thing climb fast. Wow, this thing climbs fast. All right, there's the end of the runway right there. Now we've got ourselves about 900 feet. That's pretty good. We'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Just hang on for just a moment. Again, Nantucket is a pretty busy airport. There's 1,000 feet. And now we can go ahead and gently start making our way towards our actual flight here itself. Of course, this time of year, Nantucket just starts to get a little crispy outside. It's not cold, but you know that you're on an island basically chilling out in the Atlantic kind of a thing. That is the best way to describe it. We'll go ahead and reduce our RPM now. Again, we don't need to go too hard on this. There we go, about 2,600 is going to be plenty. I'm not going to overheat anything. Now I'm going to go ahead and line up with that first route point and go ahead and tap the automatic pilot on. Now the interesting thing you'll see here is that when I flip on automatic pilot, it doesn't arm any modes. So I'm going to come down here and I'll arm my nav. And of course, with my navigation mode armed, we can now go ahead and lock on to this lovely magenta line of safety once we get to it. The other thing you'll observe too is our pitch mode is locked and it actually leveled our aircraft off. If we actually want to continue our climb, we have to give it a way to climb. So in this way, I'm just going to come in here and basically keep cranking on the nose up button until it gets to about 7.5 degrees, which is right there. And now the autopilot is completely it's got us. It's got us. And it'll take us up to our desired cruise altitude, lickety split, without too much heart attack. Now, with the G3X, when we're doing our initial climb out, the big thing for me is going to be traffic, watching out for airplanes coming and going into Nantucket. The other thing I'd be very, very interested in is if I have an engine out, where on earth I'm going to put this plane down on the ground. The nice thing is we're a small plane. There's a lot of beaches around here. I know the locals aren't going to appreciate it, but I will be nice and safe, and I'll put it down on something that I know is flat. There's also a golf course right there. There's also a major highway. We're fine. This is a very relaxing flight. So on our way up, there's a couple different things that we're going to be monitoring with the G3X. And most of it, of course, is going to be related to the engine itself. So what I'm going to do now is, now that we're kind of established on course and everything's climbing, I've got all my different modes. You can see Alt is armed right there, so we are going to capture altitude once we get to that point. I'm just going to bring this up real quick and kind of take a look at how we're doing. We have an upper limit. With cylinder number 1, for whatever bizarre reason, is a little on the warm side, but you can see it's safely in the safe zone here. Not too bad. 395 is a little warm. In the real world, of course, I don't let anything get over 390 if I can help it. Sometimes you get those hot summer days where you're basically fiddling with the throttle and the cowl flaps, desperately trying to get it to the correct temperature, and it's just not happening for you that day. But the important thing here is we're not in the bad zone or anything along those lines. And again, our exhaust gas temperatures are fine. We can't really change anything, of course, until we get a little bit higher. So I'm going to go ahead and put that away for now, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom on the PFD for a moment. Now with the PFD, you've got a lot of really useful information here. One thing you'll notice over on the left is going to be our speed tape. You'll observe here that we have our true airspeed right here on the top. You'll notice here that we have our actual indicated airspeed here, and you'll have your ground speed here. Because of a wind today, you'll notice those three numbers do not coincide. You'll also notice along the inside of this tape here, like we have this little yellow Y, it's a cyan Y, I believe, is going to be your critical V speed. So this in case will be our VY. When here we'll have, of course, our VX if we need to climb very, very steeply. Swinging over to the right, of course, you have your handy dandy little pitch ladder, this little pink mustache here. That guy's just going to be what your flight director thinks we need to be doing. Coming down here, you can see that we are not flying a coordinated flight. I could probably go and adjust my rudder, but I know this plane pretty well, so I know I'm not going to have to fiddle with it too much until I get to altitude. You can see our current wind. We're getting blasted in the face, which is pretty typical for this time of year, so I'm not worried about that too much. Not terribly strong. Flat position, you can see our rudder and our aileron trim. And coming over here, of course, you have your HSI, which is going to provide you with all the critical information. Now, a cool thing is you'll notice if I click on the HSI, it's going to bring up that PFD Options page, which is the one that we saw before. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that before. Selected heading is going to be here. Selected course is going to be here. You'll notice it's automatic. Course deviation is going to be indicated across here. Now, one of the things you'll notice is over here on the right, we have our altitude tape. This is going to be our selected altitude up top. You saw it just flash because we were within 1,000. This is our current altitude. Again, this is indicated altitude. You have to adjust the barometric pressure by clicking on it. One thing I love is you can open up this little screen here and actually dial in the barometric pressure directly by clicking on it rather than tweaking this little knob down here. So both of those settings works great. Again, I love the fact that they thought of that. Remember, things that are surrounded with something are probably buttons. Like you can actually click on the heading like that. You can even come in here and say 298, and now I've selected a heading of 298. Isn't that fabulous? I just love how they always use that paradigm for everything. You can even change the selected altitude by clicking it like that. I mean, like, come on, isn't that fantastic? And of course, if you click on the autopilot option up here, you can actually bring up the autopilot page directly, and you can control all the different autopilot settings. I mean, like, that's just awesome. That is just so darn convenient. All right, we've gone ahead and reached up our altitude here. This is a nice cruise altitude for us. 6,500 feet flying over the ocean in a single engine plane. Oh boy. I don't know how much I like this, but we're going to work with it. We're going to work with it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and set up our engine for our cruise here. And one of the nice things here is I can see I'm already at 72% power, which makes my life pretty easy. I could actually come over here and tweak my RPM. In the real world, this power would actually come down a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to come down to about 2,500 here. There we go. You can see my GPH is coming down smoothly. That looks pretty... If I've learned anything about constant speed propellers, is they're never the same RPM. No matter what you do, that number will change. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull my throttle back nice and gently here, and you're going to see my power percentage drop. We're going to drop this one down to 65%. And I absolutely love the fact that I can set my power directly. Like I don't have to get the book out to find out that 21 and 25 is going to get me 65% power. I can just do it by basically pulling back that handle. Last thing we need to do, of course, is to go ahead and set up our lovely air fuel mixture here. Taking a look here. What are you doing, cylinder 1? 405 is actually pretty hot, but that'll be cooling off in a moment, especially as we slow down a little bit here. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and press the lean assist button. When you do lean assist, the trick here is go ahead and do some leaning. You have to basically pre-lean it before it's going to post-lean. You'll see what I mean. So I'm just going to go ahead and crank this thing down. And normally your temperatures, they be chasing me a little bit here. But I believe this... Oh, there we go. Yeah, a little bit more. A little bit more. There it goes. 1575, 1580. Wait for it. You have to lean it out pretty far usually. Oh, too far. Gotcha. You can see we are 10 too far. So we got to increase the power just a little bit here. And decrease the mixture, I should say. Let's see, 9.3. A little more. A little more. Gotcha. Sweet. That's actually really lean. Holy smokes. This thing needs to go on a diet. Oh, wait, we did. So as you can see, everything is all pretty much ready to rock. We've managed to bring down our temperatures. Our air-fuel mixture is very smooth. You can see everything's working electrically here. One of the cool things is if we actually pop over the fuel calcs, you can see we're getting about 10 GPH, which is fabulous. You can see we're producing about 65% of our power, and we have about a 4-hour and 20-minute endurance right now. And again, I love the fact that you can come in here and basically fiddle with things and watch in real time these adjustments. So what we'll do now is we'll fast forward to our descent. All right, we're a little bit closer to our destination than we were, that is for sure. We've just been cruising along, not too much to complain about. It's been pretty smooth flying and not a lot of disasters along the way, which is always highly desirable. Looking up here, I noticed I've got about 19 minutes to go to get to my destination, and I've got about 37 nautical miles. In the real world, of course, at about 15 nautical miles, we go ahead and give Brainerd a call just to give him a heads up saying we're getting ready for a landing, kind of a thing like that. But for this particular moment, we're looking pretty darn good, and everything's all set. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and split everything again. We're going to go ahead and open up our map page, just make it a little bit simpler here. I'll go ahead and pop that open. And it makes it a little bit kind of easier to sort of translate some of the stuff that's going on here. Now we're going to take advantage of some of the other things the G3X does really, really, really well, which is awesome. So I'm going to come over here to the Waypoint button down here. And of course, I'm going to select Waypoint. And the reason I love this feature is if you go in here and do something like KHFD, whoa, I found something new. FD, and press my enter key here, you will notice that it recognizes this as an airport, but more importantly, it's going to give me things like runways. It's going to tell me the weather, and which I think is awesome, including the ATIS, which is awesome, which I love stuff like that. But the cool thing here is you'll actually see that we can come in here and actually pre-select the frequencies. So for example, if I wanted to get ready on my tower frequency, I can click it here, and it'll say, what would you like to do with it? I'm going to say, I'm going to go to COM 1, and you'll actually see that that 119.6 will appear here under 118.30 there, ready to be translated to. Now, the reason I love this is if I come up to ATIS, for example, and slam that into COM 2 real fast, you'll see that it loads it up into my COM 2. Now, I'm going to go ahead and now minimize this page real quick. I can hit back a few times if I want. But the reason this is so cool is if I open this up, you'll notice here that everything's pretty much ready to rock. I'm actually going to transfer that frequency like that. Open up my audio panel, and you can see that COM 2 is already selected. And the reason this is so helpful, of course, we don't have all the fun buttons that you have over here, is we can now listen in on the ATIS once we get a little bit closer to that destination. If I went to shut off COM 2, for example, I can just snap that off real quickly as well, so you don't have to listen to it continuously, basically reading your ear. But one thing we can do here, of course, is I'll flip over to transfer real quick. And if we were doing like an ATI or an AI or something like that, we could come in here. But again, can come through, oh, apparently we're a little bit further than I thought I was. Seriously? This is one thing that Flight Sim has never done well, is I've literally picked the frequency I need, yet it's going to be like, which one's closest? Are you sure you want to talk to that one? I know that there's reasons why they have to do that, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and get ready for our descent now. Like I said, we've got about 30 nautical miles, about 16. So if you have a calculator handy, if you're ever looking for the easy way to do this kind of a thing, I'll go ahead and open up my monitor real quick. The way you can do it, of course, is you take your 6,500, divide, so you need 1,000 feet. Is going to be my traffic pattern altitude, and we simply divide that by 500 feet per minute. So we need 11 minutes to get down at 500 feet per minute. So if you look up top, you can see I've got about 16 minutes to go. So we're a little premature. One thing you could do, of course, is you could give yourself 12 minutes to give yourself a little bit of time to sort of settle in at traffic altitude, especially if you're in something like a Modi, where it's going to go a little faster. So let's fast forward to 11 minutes. That's looking pretty darn close. This is about 12 minutes. We'll come in here. We'll dial in the traffic altitude. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to go ahead and select my altitude mode. I'm going to go ahead to vertical speed mode. I'll click on vertical speed. And we're just going to go ahead and change that, make that a little bit down. We'll do nose down, 500 feet per minute. Done. Isn't that fantastic? So now I can just close. I can pull my throttle back just a little bit. We don't need to reduce it too much here. There we go. And again, you can see my speed trend right there. Go ahead and unlean the mixture, I should say, enrich in it, which is going to cause everything to tweak just a little bit. And you can see now we're getting about 500 feet per minute. We're coming down. We have about 11 minutes to go. And that's going to get us planted pretty darn well at our correct altitude. Now, at this point, we probably already checked in with ATIS, so we have a pretty good idea of sort of kind of what's going on out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pre-select my desired runway heading here. I know that we're going to be doing a runway 2 today, so I'm just going to come here and dial that in. And you can see it's ready to rock. So now visually, before I even get to the airport, I already know roughly how I'm going to be hitting that runway. Now, if I need, I can always pop this one up as well. One other quick thing I forgot to mention is you can click and drag this. Now, the reason that's so useful is I can actually drag and zoom. So if I wanted to actually look at the airport real quickly here, I'll put them side by side like this. You can see very, very clearly just how easy it is for me to actually come in here. No, I did not select the correct runway heading. Shame. That's better. And that was also a great little check here, because now I can see very, very clearly that this actually makes sense. And that's one of the things I love about this particular tool is you can just zip in there, do that quick little change that you need to change. And now when you're ready to go back to your original flight, you just bam, just like that. And now you're ready to rock. So let's get ourselves into the traffic pattern. There we are. We're just about there. Now, one of the cool things here is you'll actually see this little cyan line, which will tell us where our estimated drop-off point is. And incredibly, when we cross this line, will be exactly 1 minute from our landing, which is just one of those things which is absolutely fantastic if you really, really think about it. How we were able to have that much precision in a little two-seater propeller airplane with a single device. And I just love stuff like that. And of course, in the real world, it's always satisfying when you, as the pilot, kind of work all those things out in advance. But it's just amazing to think that it's that adaptable of equipment that I can just click, click, and I'm basically ready to rock for whatever it is that I need to do on a particular mission. Of course, now that we've come on down here, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and do things like setting up all your different options. We want to make sure our lights are set correctly. We want to make sure we're going to flip on the fuel tank over here. Just make sure we're using fuel evenly, make sure that's all set correctly. Other things we need to do too is our usual, GUMPS checks, make sure the RPM is good, making sure we've got permission to land and all that other stuff. But you can see just how the G3X makes your life that much simpler, as well as that precise when we're going to go ahead and get ourselves set up. So let's go get lined up for that landing. Now, in Hartford, of course, so we have a noise abatement procedure. So when you are coming in for a landing, if you're doing it right, if you're not flying over those people's houses, one of those little details I always got a kick out of. It's one of those things that when you were first learning to fly an airplane kind of a deal, you never really thought of until you had an airplane fly over your house 1,000 times, because you also live near an airport. And you're like, nope, I appreciate noise abatement procedures a little bit. Plus, in my opinion, I find a nice, gentle left turn when possible makes it actually easier to line up at the end of the runway. But that's just me. So we're set up, everything's good. We've done our GUMPS checks, gas undercarriage, mission, propeller flaps, light speed. We're good to go. And of course, we're just going to come swing over the end of the runway here. I'm going to pull that nose up just to suck a little energy out of the plane. That's what I wanted right there. Nice. Coming in about 60 knots, so we burnt a pretty good amount of gas today. So it's definitely been a successful flight in that regard. One thing I love about this plane is it's more sensitive than it looks. It's very, very, very similar in so many ways to like a Cessna 172. But it also has this nice little almost ultralight twitch to it, which surprises people and definitely surprises me. Just a little bit of slip to kind of bleed that last little bit of speed off there. Got a little bit of a crosswind, so as I come settle this thing down, come on, wheels, come on. There we go. I'll go ahead and I'll put my right aileron down a little bit. Whoops. See, that's frustrating. Pilot-induced oscillation. Ha 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 ha. Go ahead and hold that brake, and now we're looking fantastic. So as you can see, the G3X system is amazing. Like, they did a really, really nice job both modeling it, and once you kind of get it set up for what you need it to do, the sky's the limit, literally. Enjoy.